The clinking of cutlery was the only sound in the room. My parents sat at the head of the table, smiling at my brother like he'd won a prize. Dad slid an envelope across to him. "Don't worry, son," he said. "Your sister will cover the rest. She always does." Everyone laughed except me. My brother grinned, tapping the envelope like it was his birthright. The air felt heavy, sweet with the smell of roasted chicken and betrayal. I felt my chest tighten as Mom added, "It's only fair. You make more money, sweetheart. Family helps family." But it wasn't help. It was control dressed up as love. I looked around the table, every eye waiting for me to nod, to say yes, of course. My voice shook, but I finally whispered, "Not this time." The laughter froze. Dad's jaw clenched, the smile slipping off his face like melting wax. That night, they thought they'd broken me with their silence, their guilt, their anger. They had no idea what was coming next. Before that dinner, I would have told you my family was close. That's what people called it anyway, close. The kind of close that squeezes the air out of you. I was the dependable one, the one who remembered birthdays, fixed printers, helped Mom with bills when Dad's business deals went quiet. I wasn't the favorite. I was the fallback. Every family has roles. My brother Ryan was the golden child. Mom said he had that spark, though the only thing he ever lit was the family budget on fire. New cars, failed startups, credit cards that somehow always got paid. By me. I worked hard, early mornings at the marketing firm, late nights balancing spreadsheets and coffee cups, whispering to myself that one day I'd buy my own peace. But peace never came. Not in that house. Our neighborhood looked picture perfect from the outside. Trimmed lawns, pastel houses, quiet evenings where neighbors waved over fences. But behind our white front door, everything was a trade. Affection for obedience, silence for belonging. Mom ruled through guilt. "You're so lucky we supported you through college," she'd remind me. Dad enforced through pride. "Ryan just needs time," he'd say, even as I paid off his third business loan. I didn't fight back. I thought being the bigger person meant staying quiet. That love was proven by sacrifice. But the signs were always there, little humiliations packaged as jokes. Like the time Ryan crashed his car and Dad told him not to worry because I'd figure something out, or when Mom forgot to pay the property tax bill in my name and blamed me for being disorganized. Each incident chipped away at something inside me, though I smiled through it, pretending I didn't notice. There was one moment, though, that changed everything. It was a Sunday afternoon. The sun was spilling gold through the kitchen window. I just transferred $2,800 to cover Ryan's emergency dental work. He came in, chewing gum, perfectly fine. "Thanks, sis," he said with a wink. "You're the family's personal ATM." Mom laughed. Even Dad smirked. Something in me cracked, not loud, but final, like glass underfoot. That night, I opened my old childhood box in the attic, where I used to keep drawings and birthday cards. Inside was a tiny pink piggy bank, faded and dusty. The same one I'd used as a kid to save for college. It was empty now. But holding it made something shift inside me. A quiet anger, steady and clear. That piggy bank became my reminder. Every coin I'd ever given, every apology I'd ever swallowed, every time I'd been told, "You'll cover it." The next morning, I started watching, listening, keeping receipts, not just paper ones, emotional ones, because I finally understood. This wasn't family help. It was debt disguised as love. When I said no for the first time, it didn't sound like much. Just one word. Quiet, almost polite. But in my family, no was treason. The morning after that dinner, Mom called. No greeting. Just, "Are you really going to make your brother suffer over a few $1,000s?" I could hear Ryan laughing in the background. My fingers tightened on the phone. "Mom, he's not suffering. He just doesn't want to take responsibility." Her tone turned icy. "You've changed, Emily. Don't forget who helped you get where you are." Click. That was the start of it. The calls, the guilt trips, the whispers behind my back. Within a week, relatives I hadn't spoken to in years were checking in. "I heard you're having a tough time," one aunt said sweetly. "Money's tight?" I realized what Ryan had done. He'd told everyone that I was unstable, that I'd become greedy, ungrateful. The family ATM had shut down, and now they were all waiting for it to spit out cash again. The tension seeped into everything. I'd come home from work and see Mom's car idling at the curb, headlights glowing through the blinds. Once she left a casserole on my porch, and a note. "Family shouldn't turn their backs on each other." Underneath, she'd written Ryan's new loan amount. I started losing sleep. The weight of it all pressed on my chest like a stone. Emails piled up, food lost its taste, and even silence felt loud. At work, people noticed. "Rough week?" my manager Nina asked gently. She was sharp but kind, the kind of person who could read emotions faster than spreadsheets. I tried to smile. "Family stuff." She nodded knowingly. "The hardest debts to pay are the ones they say you owe for love." Her words hit me like a mirror. That night, I opened a new folder on my computer. Proof, bank transfers, text messages, voicemails, everything. I didn't know what I was building, but I knew I needed a record. Days turned into weeks, and the rumors got worse. At church, people whispered. At family gatherings, they stared. Ryan played the victim perfectly, sighing, shaking his head, saying, "I don't know why she's doing this to Mom and Dad." I'd walk into the room and feel the air change, like I'd dragged a storm in with me. The breaking point came one evening when I stopped by my parents' house to drop off mail addressed to them. Ryan was there, sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone. Dad was beside him, muttering about family loyalty. When I turned to leave, Dad said, "You'll regret this, Emily." Family doesn't forget betrayal. I froze at the doorway. My voice was steady. "No, Dad. I won't forget either." I drove home trembling, headlights blurring in the dark, my pulse thudding in my ears. For the first time, I wasn't scared. I was furious. But underneath that fury was something else, clarity. A few days later, Nina caught me in the break room. "I know you're dealing with something heavy," she said, "but you're stronger than they think. Don't let them rewrite your story." Then she handed me a card. Her sister was a lawyer who specialized in financial abuse cases. That moment changed everything. It was the first time in months someone looked at me not as a failure or a villain, but as a person fighting to be free. When families want control, they don't always scream. Sometimes they document. It started with a letter, a thick white envelope with my name written in my mother's tidy cursive. Inside, a formal notice from their family attorney. Apparently, my parents claimed they had loaned me over $30,000 throughout my 20s. Tuition, rent help, miscellaneous support. Now they wanted it back. I sat on my couch reading those words again and again, the paper trembling in my hands. My mother's voice echoed in my head. Family helps family. I'd believed that once. This wasn't help. It was blackmail. I called her. She answered immediately, tone syrupy sweet. "Oh good, you got it. We didn't want to make this ugly, Emily, but you forced our hand." My heart pounded. "You gifted that money." "I have every transfer note, every text." "Then we'll let the court decide," she replied smoothly. Ryan's voice chimed in the background. "Told you she'd crack." The call ended. For the first time in my life, my parents weren't just emotionally attacking me. They'd gone legal. And for a moment, I felt completely small. The world blurred. All those years of being the responsible one. And suddenly, I was the villain, the ungrateful child who'd taken advantage. But something in me refused to collapse this time. I gathered every file, every screenshot, every message saved in my proof folder. I called Nina's sister, Laura, the lawyer. She listened quietly, asking precise questions. Then she said something that steadied my shaking breath. "Emily, they're bluffing. You've got the records, they've got emotion. That's not law." Her confidence felt like a warm light cutting through fog. We spent hours sorting through evidence. She taught me what to document, what to print, how to phrase every future reply. When the next letter arrived, this time threatening civil recovery, I sent back a short, perfect email. All prior transfers were voluntary gifts, records attached, further contact through counsel only. It felt like reclaiming oxygen after years underwater. The silence that followed was eerie. No calls, no texts, not even a casserole on the porch. But I knew that quiet wasn't peace. It was planning. 2 weeks later, a police cruiser pulled up in front of my driveway. Officer Bennett, tall, patient eyes, knocked gently. "Ms. Reeves, your mother filed a welfare check. Said she's concerned about your mental state." I stared at him, stunned. "She what?" He sighed. "Ma'am, it happens. Sometimes it's not about concern. It's about control." That word again. Control. I invited him in, showed him the files, the legal notice, the texts. He left shaking his head. "Looks like you're the stable one here." But the damage was done. Neighbors had seen the cruiser. They whispered, exchanged looks. Ryan must have loved that. They wanted me to snap, to look unhinged. Instead, I got smarter. Laura and I built a timeline, 10 years of financial abuse disguised as help. The piggy bank sat on my desk the whole time, filled now with paper slips, each one a receipt or record. Every coin of control they'd ever thrown my way, I was turning into evidence. And when I saw Mom at the grocery store one evening, she smirked. "Sweetheart, you can't win this. Family always sticks together." I smiled back, calm as stone. "Then it won't be family anymore." For the first time, her expression faltered. A crack, small but visible. The quiet didn't last. It never does. 2 months after the police visit, the real storm began. Ryan posted a vague Facebook status. "Sad when greed makes people forget where they came from." The comments flooded in. Family friends, neighbors, even old teachers. And there it was, buried halfway down. My mother's reply. "We just pray she finds her way back to love." Love. They always used that word like a weapon. By the next week, half the neighborhood was whispering. Mrs. Kaplan, our next-door neighbor, stopped waving. My boss mentioned she'd heard something concerning from a mutual acquaintance. Ryan was spreading rumors that I'd embezzled family money, that I was being investigated. I laughed the first time I heard it, until Laura showed me the anonymous email someone had sent to my HR department. That's when I realized they weren't just trying to break my spirit, they were trying to erase my credibility. I started tracking everything. IP logs, message screenshots, call times. I upgraded my locks. The old pink piggy bank on my desk had turned into a war trophy, filled now with folded notes, each one labeled proof. Every night I'd light a single candle beside it and work in silence, documenting, organizing, reclaiming. The flicker of the flame felt like a heartbeat, a reminder that I was still here. Then, unexpectedly, help started to arrive. Mrs. Kaplan's teenage daughter, Lily, came over one afternoon. "I saw Ryan at the coffee shop," she said nervously. "He was bragging about how he'd handle you." I recorded it. She handed me her phone, and there it was, Ryan's voice laughing. She's too proud to realize the whole town's turning on her. One call to HR and she'll crumble. That audio clip became my next file. Piece by piece, their empire of lies was turning into evidence. Still, the emotional toll was brutal. Some nights I'd wake up sweating, half convinced I'd hear Mom's car outside again. My hands shook when I checked my phone, expecting new threats or fake concern. Laura urged me to stay focused. People like them, she said, don't know how to handle losing control. Let them dig their own hole. And they did, spectacularly. Ryan filed a small claim suit for unpaid family obligations. The irony almost made me laugh. It was the perfect move, petty, public, and doomed to backfire. Laura and I prepared meticulously. Bank records, signed cards, even voice messages of my parents thanking me for covering things again. But I also wanted something poetic, something symbolic. So I took the piggy bank with me to the pre-trial mediation. When Ryan walked into the room, smug as ever, he smirked. Cute. You bring your savings? I placed it on the table gently. No, I said. I brought the history of every dollar I've ever given you. He didn't understand. Not yet. But he would. The mediation was postponed, but something had shifted. Rumors began to unravel as truth seeped through small cracks. Neighbors who'd once ignored me started to see the pattern, the fake sympathy posts, the contradictions, and then, out of nowhere, Mom texted me, "You're destroying this family. Are you proud of yourself?" I didn't reply. I simply saved the message under a new folder. Manipulation, emotional triggers. Every word, every guilt trip was now data, no longer pain. That's when I realized I wasn't reacting anymore. I was strategizing. Each move they made became a step closer to their exposure. Each lie became another entry in my growing case. I wasn't their victim. I was their historian. And soon, I'd be their mirror. The courthouse smelled like old paper and disinfectant, sharp, sterile, unforgiving. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I sat at the long wooden table, my hands folded around a single object, the pink piggy bank. Ryan was already there, flanked by my parents. Mom wore pearls. Dad had his proud, hard mask on, the one he used to wear at PTA meetings when pretending everything was fine. Ryan gave me that same cocky grin he'd worn all his life. "Still time to settle," he whispered as I sat down. I didn't look at him. "You've been settling your whole life, Ryan. Just not your debts." The mediator entered, calm and professional. "We're here to discuss the financial dispute between family members." Mom spoke first, voice syrupy and rehearsed. "We love our daughter. We just want what's fair." Dad nodded solemnly. "She's forgotten everything we sacrificed for her." I waited until their performance ended, until the air grew thick with their lies. Then I reached into my bag and began laying papers on the table. Transfer receipts, voicemails, screenshots, signed thank you cards, and finally, the printed transcript of Ryan's voice bragging at the coffee shop, "One call to HR and she'll crumble." The room fell silent except for the soft rustle of paper. Ryan's smirk faltered. Mom's hands trembled, the pearl bracelet clinking softly against the table. "I didn't come here to fight," I said quietly. "I came here to stop paying for the privilege of being mistreated." I turned to the mediator. Every dollar I gave them was a gift. Every accusation since then has been retaliation for saying no. Laura, seated beside me, slid another folder forward, organized, color-coded. "Ms. Reeves's evidence shows a clear pattern of financial coercion," she said firmly. "This isn't about loans. It's about control." The mediator adjusted her glasses, scanning the papers. Her expression shifted. Slow, deliberate recognition. Ryan leaned back, his voice cracking. "You can't prove emotional stuff like that." I smiled faintly. "I don't need to." "You already did." And then, with deliberate care, I placed the piggy bank in the center of the table. Its faded pink glaze caught the light like a scar that had finally stopped bleeding. "This," I said, "was mine when I was 8. I saved every coin for college, until they made me believe I owed them everything. Not anymore." The silence was absolute. Even Laura paused, watching the way Mom's eyes glistened, not from guilt, but humiliation. The mediator cleared her throat softly. Based on this evidence, I see no grounds for repayment. I recommend dismissal. Mom's lips parted. You can't. The mediator's gaze hardened. Mrs. Reeves, your daughter doesn't owe you for raising her? That's not how family works. Ryan slammed his hand on the table. She's ruining us. I looked at him, calm, almost pitying. No, Ryan. You did that the moment you thought my worth had a price tag. He stood up abruptly, knocking his chair over. Dad caught his arm, but the damage was done. The image of the perfect son shattered right there in front of strangers. Mom reached toward me across the table, her voice trembling. Emily, please. We're still your parents. I met her eyes. Soft, steady, resolute. I don't want apologies. I want change. And with that, I gathered my papers, tucked the piggy bank back into my bag, and walked out into the sunlight. The sky outside was a piercing blue, the kind that feels too honest after years of shadow. For the first time, I didn't feel like running from my past. I felt like I'd finally caught up to it. For weeks after the mediation, the house felt impossibly still. No phone calls, no guilt-drenched messages, no shadows idling at the end of my driveway. It was the kind of quiet I hadn't known in years, the kind that hums softly instead of accusing. I'd expected to feel triumphant, but what I felt was something better. Weightless. Like my lungs could finally expand without permission. My parents didn't appeal. Ryan went silent on social media after people started asking questions. Real ones, the kind he couldn't spin. Eventually, word spread. Their case was dismissed, and the truth had outed itself. The whispers around town shifted. Pity turned to curiosity to respect. But I didn't need validation anymore. I just needed distance. So I packed. The apartment I'd once called a refuge had become a reminder of calls, fights, fear. I moved into a small craftsman house on the edge of town, surrounded by oak trees and wind chimes. The first night there, I slept with the windows open, breathing in rain and freedom. I brought very little with me, just clothes, a few photos, and that faded pink piggy bank. It sat on my new bookshelf, no longer empty. Inside, I placed folded $2 bills, one for every month I'd stayed strong, one for every no I hadn't apologized for. It wasn't about the money. It was a promise to myself. Never again. Sometimes, late at night, I'd make tea and replay the last few months in my head. The courtroom light, the stunned silence, my mother's shaking hands. But instead of pain, I felt something softer, understanding. They weren't evil. They were broken in ways they never faced, and I wasn't their victim. I was their mirror. I started therapy again. Learned how to unlearn guilt. I even joined a local support group, people who'd faced financial abuse within families. When I told my story, I didn't cry. I just said, they tried to make me their provider, their apology, their peace. I became my own instead. Heads nodded around the circle. One woman squeezed my hand and whispered, "That's freedom." Weeks turned into months, and life rebuilt itself slowly. I earned a promotion at work. Nina smiled when she told me, "You've become unstoppable, Emily." I laughed, genuinely, for the first time in a long time. One afternoon I got a letter in the mail, from my father. Just one line, written in his sharp handwriting. "I hope you're happy." I read it twice, then folded it neatly and placed it inside the piggy bank. It didn't sting. It didn't matter. It was just another piece of the past, sealed away. When spring came, I repainted the living room, a color I'd always loved but never used, pale blue. The same shade as the sky on the day I walked out of that courthouse. Every brushstroke felt like reclaiming territory, my space, my story, my peace. Sometimes I'd catch myself smiling at small things. The smell of coffee at dawn, the hum of the fridge, my own reflection not looking tired anymore. The world hadn't changed, but I had. The piggy bank gleamed softly in the sunlight, now half filled with crisp $2 bills. It wasn't a symbol of loss anymore. It was proof of transformation. I didn't need to forgive them to move on. I just needed to stop carrying them. And I did. Have you ever been the one everyone depended on until you stopped saying yes? Have you ever carried a family's weight so long you forgot how to stand on your own? If you have, then you already know. Peace doesn't come from fixing others. It comes from freeing yourself. Favoritism, betrayal, control. They all leave scars. But those scars can become your proof that you survived. Tell me in the comments, when did you finally decide you were done paying for someone else's comfort? Because worth isn't something they give you. It's something you claim for yourself. One no at a time.